mean, should we start with the introductions or start with the show's introduction?
We can start with the show's introduction.
Okay, I mean, the show's just going to be us sitting around, almost using this as an excuse to get together and talk about these, have these conversations that we want to have more often than not.
Yeah.
Yet unnamed show. I don't think that matters too much.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, whatever we add to a future Google Doc is going to be what we discuss.
Well, I think this kind of grew out of us just having these conversations in Discord.
Yeah.
Like, we would just sit here and have these conversations and debate and agree on things, and then we were like, we should let more than just us three talk about this stuff.
Let somebody else come in and berate us for our bad opinions.
Yeah, I agree with all that, right? Like, this is just the kind of thing we like to talk about anyways, right? Gaming news, gaming culture, pop gaming, anything, latest games, all that type of stuff. It's just stuff we want to talk about. So it seems like it makes sense to, like, let's record it and see if other people are interested in talking about these things too.
We got some opinions.
We got
a couple opinions.
Some hot takes.
Yeah. God. All right. I'm Warren.
I'm Xell.
I'm Red World.
No.
Red World.
Yeah, Xell or Xell Twitch.
No, let's not do it.
We're plugging ourselves.
God, do we go straight into a game?
I mean, I want to talk about Final Fantasy, but...
Yeah, so Final Fantasy is a series we're all familiar with. We've all played... I mean, I don't know how many you've played in total, but I've played at least 3 of them to the end, I want to say.
That's a good starting point, yeah. Mm-hmm. How many Final Fantasy games have you taken to completion?
Wait, word like that, man. Finish it. So I finished 9. I've been in the room with more than one person when they finished 7, but I've played a lot of 7. I feel like enough to really appreciate the vibe and then know what the entire story is.
You didn't beat 7.
No.
That's surprising, actually.
Well, it's not if you know my dad and know that he was a PlayStation hog, and he would be like, 1 second, I'm almost at the save point. I'd be like, Dad, I played the game too. I know you're not at the like you just passed it.
One of my core memories actually is, growing up, so we grew up together.
Yeah.
And being at your house, and your dad was like the most hardcore adult gamer I've ever seen in my life. I mean, the dude just all day, he was retired. So the dude, like, all day, every day was just in that couch playing Final Fantasy.
Just the dream.
If you want to picture it, just imagine Santa Claus sitting with one of those massive, like, $70 guides you used to buy, flipped open with, I'm talking footnotes out the asshole on both ends. He used to have a clamp he would put on the controller so that it would make Cloud continue chocobo racing so that he could farm.
Bro.
That's...
You just reminded me, too, another core memory unlocked. Not only did he have, like, the guides, right? The guidebooks, right? You remember guidebooks?
Oh, yeah. I trashed a bunch of them.
He would print them off of, like, GameFAQs. It would be, like, 900 pages long of printed guidebook, and he'd put it in a 3-ring binder. Like, bro, man.
Dedication.
Yeah, he was big into that stuff, and there's a few core games that he wants to go back to, and I actually had to stop him from buying a Nintendo Switch because I showed him a quick thing of like, oh yeah, look, I got 7 and 9. He's like, hold on, and he almost bought it.
But getting back to it though, so
getting back to it, yeah. So 7 was one I'm very familiar with, even though I haven't beaten it. 9 was my favorite just because I like a high fantasy kind of setting.
Yeah,
I like a little bit of levity in the story, and one's like 7 has that still. I never touched 8. I played 10 to the finish as well. Then everything past that, I played the MMOs, both of them a little bit. Didn't play 15, and now 16. And I've jumped back to some of the Pixel ones, but I've never gotten far. So,
what about you?
I have beaten 7, 9, 10, 12, 15, and Tactics.
Oh, I forgot Tactics. I didn't play that.
Did you beat Tactics?
I didn't beat it, but I played a lot of it.
I think it got hard.
And Crystal Chronicles.
What favorite of them?
Probably not. Well, 9 and Tactics for me are both.
That's fair.
They're both right there.
So I've played and beaten 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. And that's it. Those are the ones I've beaten.
Did you clear the campaign in 14?
There's a lot of campaign in 14.
Not all the expansions, no. I did through the base game, and I'm in like the second expansion in 14. I did play 11 also. You mentioned playing both MMOs. We actually have both played both MMOs also.
Yeah.
11, wow, that was a WoW competitor way back when, like vanilla WoW competitor.
Yeah. My first introduction to MMOs was at your house. I came to visit. This was after you'd moved, and you were playing 11. And I was like fully invested. Like, what is this? And there's other people in here. Excuse you. And
Was this pre-WoW?
that was pre-WoW.
Wow.
Because the next time I came over, after having played 11, being excited, you were now playing WoW. And my first image of WoW, ever seeing WoW, you were on a druid, which I believe was your first character that you abandoned pretty quick. But you were on a
Wasn't
druid
my first, but yeah.
in cat form. You hadn't gotten travel form yet. I remember you were a cat, and then you were like, check this out. And then you turned into a bear, and then you turned back into a cowman, and I'm like, I'll be at my house.
Oh man, God, this is a whole different topic.
This is so easy to break into that history, but
the immersion of MMOs onto the scene.
MMOs, and that is part of, because our whole discussion is going to be, you're very, in a way, against, I mean, it's kind of making it very singular, but you don't like the new approach of 16. And
You're talking about Xell.
yeah.
That's definitely
This
my
guy.
stance.
And it's one of those things where, like, those Final Fantasies aren't unnumbered. They're not called Final Fantasy MMO or anything. Like, they are numbered entries.
You're talking 16?
Yeah, and
He's talking
11
about
and 11 and 14.
Oh, okay.
And then it's one of those things where, like, they've evolved so much that this one is fine. It's different. I don't think it's the way it's going to stay, especially based on the reception. But, like,
What do you mean?
Are you seeing negativity?
Less negativity and more sales numbers.
Oh, around 16. So I'm glad you brought it up by attacking Xell immediately because
As I had to do.
But I want to let's hear it, right? Like, I want to hear, Xell, your nuanced position on Final Fantasy 16 as someone who hasn't played it but has played the
Introductory 2
demo.
hours.
the demo, which was not necessarily a demo. It was like just the first 2 hours of the game / demo. But anyways, let's hear it.
Yeah, so first of all, let me just start off by saying I love the demo. The demo was a great experience. I had so much fun with the 2-hour demo that I actually made my wife play right afterwards. And I sat there and watched
you did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I watched Ash play through the whole thing.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
both really enjoyed it. A lot of fun, but just the entire time I was playing it, like, it didn't feel like Final Fantasy to me. And, that's not always a bad thing, but I struggle with it because they continue to, like, make changes that to me don't really make sense. Like, if you ask anyone, and I'll limit it down to, like, maybe our generation, but most of the gamers that we know, if you ask them, hey, what are your favorite Final Fantasies? You get the same 3 numbers, right? It's usually 6, 7, 8, 9, one of those 4. And the games, the ones you never hear are the ones that have changed. I've never heard anyone say 15 is my favorite. I'm the only one of this group that beat 15.
I know enough about 15 to not touch it.
Yeah.
And it's not because of the combat. It's all the shit around it. Do you know how plagued 15 was?
I played a lot of 15.
They shot themselves in the foot because they made a movie, like, tie-in.
Yeah.
Or like a series tie-in that had pieces of the story that you wouldn't get if you played the game, and vice versa. So it's like, to fully appreciate one, you had to do the other, and to do the other, you had to do. You know what I mean? Like, they made it difficult to get into that story while also making it an interesting story. I think the idea of having some boy band in a car kind of thing, road tripping, is fine, because Final Fantasy's always been about the party. It's always been about the connections you make. So an entire game based around connections is totally cool. As long as you splash in chocobos, moogles, Phoenix Downs, and summons, like, it's a Final Fantasy game, in my opinion.
I would definitely like to touch on Final Fantasy 15 at some point, maybe after 16, because
you gotta play it through.
I don't even know what my opinion. I played many hours of Final Fantasy 15. and I don't know what my opinion is. I didn't finish it, and I don't feel motivated to finish it. So maybe that says enough, but...
Yeah, I heard it was just disjointed. I mean, I'm speaking from no experience, so I can't really talk. I didn't care enough. You hear a few negative things, and that's kind of enough for you to be like, okay, maybe I'll just steer clear. It's not worth a full price game.
Mm-hmm.
But...
Yeah, I mean, like, even 12. Like, 12, for example.
I love 12.
I really like 12 also, but I think that was kind of the point where they started to do something different.
You mean with the combat system?
Yeah, like they were experimenting and you could tell, and I liked 12 and I beat it, but it was like, I don't know if we needed to change the combat. Like, I don't know if that was a step in the right direction.
Did you play 12?
No. Once again, I'm very familiar with it. I've seen a lot of streams through of it, and I've been with friends while they were playing it. You being one of them at your house.
Oh, you watched them 12?
Yeah.
I really loved 12.
The setting was cool. Everything felt Final Fantasy, and if you really think about when 12 came out, like the one before that was 11, their first dive into MMOs. So they hit 10, which took away open worlds. The first chance they were able to try to drive a story and make the more detailed, change what you expect out of it, they did it. Because I think as soon as they got off PlayStation 1, they had new avenues, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they hit 11, and they're like, fuck it, let's try to make an MMO. And then they hit 12, and they're like, fuck, let's do something different. And then like 13 was, this like them trying to make this big cinematic piece, and they kind of lost the game with it, and that's why a lot of people don't resonate with it.
I really want to go back and play 13 because I don't think I ever gave it a fair chance.
Yeah, I just think once you get past PS1, you really see that team has always tried to get away from the last thing they did. And that's why with 16, I don't think that like this is necessarily a negative thing to see this game. If you don't resonate with it, it's fine, because I'm confident the next one is going to be the least expected. This can be a first-person shooter. Like, you don't know. They don't care.
Yeah, I know, and that's the part that pains me. It's just like I said, man. Like, you ask people what their favorite games are. Final Fantasy 6 through 10 gets brought up all the time. I recently beat 10, and I loved it. It was really good. But
how much of that do you think is nostalgia factor though, versus like
this is hard. This is hard for me because I feel like the attributing things to nostalgia is kind of just like a get out of jail free card. It's like, yeah, okay, it was a good point in life, it was good memories, and maybe that inflates it a little bit. But I think as soon as you wrap things into nostalgia, you just kind of lose the validity behind the argument. So,
to a degree, maybe, but would you say, like, if Final Fantasy VII got released today, do you think it would have been nearly as popular?
Probably not.
But just based on the saturation of the market, no. Because there's so many good stories being told. I don't think, like, Final Fantasy's combat, that's the thing. It's hard to argue what made it big because it was all of it.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy, there's not one piece of that game that isn't iconic. Like, nothing.
The characters.
The fanfare for beating a fight. Every boss battle, every music, every side quest, everything in that game is iconic. So it's hard to say what thing made it. I think what truly did make it was the story is phenomenal. And the pacing and this bait and switch where you like... don't realize, you think Midgar is the game, you think that's the kind of game you're seeing, and then you get out of that first disc and they're like, here's the open world, and you're like, excuse me? And back then that was just like insanity.
I don't know if any games were like on that scale on PS1.
I mean, there's a reason it had 4 discs.
Yeah.
Three, sorry.
Yeah, I think it just broke open a new world of gaming that no one had anticipated.
Yeah.
So getting back to then, right, what you were kind of going on about is, see, you had said, I took note of this, as you said, it didn't feel like Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what you mean by that.
Yeah, so Final Fantasy 16, so far to me, feels like they wanted to create a Devil May Cry / Elden Ring game, but they knew it wouldn't do well. So they slapped some summons in there, called it Final Fantasy 16, and that was their marketing push. And throughout this podcast, I'll bring up other games that I think fall into this same line of thinking.
Okay.
Like, it's a marketing strategy that they're using to ensure that they sell games. Now, that being said, Final Fantasy 16, if it was not named Final Fantasy 16, I don't think it would do nearly as well, but I think it would have been fine. Like, the storyline seems really good. The cutscenes are unbelievable. I'm going to watch a YouTube video to go through the entire story and the entire cutscenes because I think those are phenomenal.
You're not gonna play it? You don't think?
I don't think so. And this is gonna bring up the this is gonna bring up the very unique perspective that I have. But I would feel wrong giving them my money when they're going in a direction that I don't want them to go. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's totally valid. There's things about it that I don't feel Final Fantasy, but the weird thing is the combat is not the thing that... The combat is always, to me, in Final Fantasy, is like been a vehicle to tell stories. And the way they used to do it on Super Nintendo was make it turn-based, make the boss the entire screen, and make you do this big. And that's your way of saying, hey, that's how big this is, because there's no other way they could do that without making it, while also having the scale of the game they wanted. And in this one, it's like, okay, our way of doing that is to make it the most epic, insane, Attack on Titan ass, battle. Like, every time I go into an Icon fight, I think of Godzilla Destroy All Monsters for the GameCube. Like, it's just like, oh, we're in it now. And, like, it's... I don't know. It's just... It's still Final Fantasy in the ways that, like, they took a lot of care to make sure. I mean, hell, one of the first minor spoilers, hopefully you don't mind. Very minor. I'm not going to break into, like, plot beats, but basically the first character you meet when you start the game proper is Sid. He's just a main character in the game.
Always a Sid, yeah.
And this Sid is, is it Sidolphus or something, but it's Sid. And
I don't know. Is Sid always short for Sidolphus, or is that something?
No, that's them being like, how do we do this fantasy?
Okay,
make it fantasy.
I wasn't expecting that when she was like Sidolphus.
Hey, Sidolphus. Okay.
Wait a minute.
There's that. You got chocobos. There's a Moogle, right?
Yeah.
You got the same sounds. You've got the fanfare, but they like made it with like a monk choir sounding looking kind of thing. There's still the care to try to be like, hey guys, look, this is to remind you at every turn, like, hey, this is Final Fantasy, and hell, it's about the core. They call them icons now, but the summons are like the plot in a lot of ways.
I do like that.
The thing that feels less Final Fantasy to me is the story. It's so directly derived from
Game of Thrones. Yeah,
but like,
it's
but in a way where it's like I feel like they lost them telling their own story. It like so far because like it is like Clive is Jon Snow. He has a dog companion. His mother is a cold bitch who hates him. His like Sean Bean gets axed in the demo. Like, and he's literally just a Sean Bean character. Even looks like him. Like I hear that as the game goes on, they start finding their own thing and it gets all wacky and Final Fantasy-y. But right now, like, the things that make Final Fantasy to me are like, yeah, those serious moments with a little bit of levity. Like, you want to see Vivi fucking trip while he's walking and stuff like that. You don't get that in this game at all. I've heard like one person make a wisecrack once that made someone smirk. And like everything else has been very dour, and that's the non-Final Fantasy to me. Even in the darkest stories of like, Midgar's the most depressing fucking place on Earth. But like every scene had levity, like you dress up like a girl to sneak in, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's the kind of stuff that makes this feel less Final Fantasy.
I want to ask you because you played the most, and I feel like you're the most diehard Final Fantasy player out of all of us. So for you to like lean into 16 was a little surprising to me. I mean, like no party system? You don't get to choose a party?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm still formulating like my overall opinion of the game. There are certain things I love about it. It's cinematically gorgeous. I love that there's a huge emphasis on what they call the icons, right? It's the summons, the espers, the whatever you call it in the other ones. To me, I mean, my first impression of it was this is Attack on Titan meets Final Fantasy meets Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So to kind of like address your question though, it certainly doesn't have things that I kind of would have thought, no party system is unexpected. Mm-hmm. I really wasn't like consuming media leading up to Final Fantasy 16's release, so I actually had no idea. Like, I was actually totally unprepared for Final Fantasy 16 to drop.
Yeah.
It was like, oh shit, it drops in a week. Like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah, I feel like you were totally dark when I was like, hey, dude, the demo's out, and I just played it, and it whipped. And then you played it, and you're like, it fucking whipped, and then
I was dark too.
we
I had
bullied
no
you.
idea. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know though. I don't know if I would say like that ruins it for me. Like I'm not playing through it and thinking to myself like, man, this doesn't have a party system. Like this sucks. Because of the way they structure the combat, it makes sense that they don't have a party system. Your character basically is a full party. Like I actually find myself a little bit overwhelmed in the combat sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of fights are pretty easy. Some fights are on the tougher side. I've definitely like game over a couple times. But there you get to a point where you have, I don't want to spoil anything, but you get to a point where you have like a pretty large arsenal of like skills and stuff that you have to balance. And so like it makes sense to me why there isn't a party system. Warren, you brought up the point, and I think I would maybe even agree with you a little bit that the story probably feels the least kind of Final Fantasy out of most other Final Fantasy games I've played, in the sense that like it's not really like high fantasy. Like I'm thinking of Final Fantasy 6, 7, 9.
So yeah, that's the thing. They changed their settings so drastically that I wouldn't associate, if they said the next one is a full space fantasy, I'd say you can make that a Final Fantasy. That would still be fine. Like, because they've always changed. I mean, you look at Midgar, there's motorcycle, road rash fights versus the high fantasy of other games versus, the low fantasy of this one. I guess kind of mixed with high fantasy. But it's got like that Witcher grunge to it, you know what I mean?
Well, I will say though that I think the story's phenomenal so far.
Yeah, it's great.
I think the story's incredible. I think the way they're running the cinematics is phenomenal. Does it lean more like Game of Thrones than maybe what I would expect from like traditional Final Fantasy? Probably so. Right now, I don't expect it going down in history as like my top 3 favorite Final Fantasies.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll make the list. I don't know if that's nostalgia or what. I mean, I love 7, 8, and 9 so much. Honestly, even 10 and 12, like that whole chunk. A lot of people fall off after 7.
Mm-hmm.
Most people either didn't play or didn't like 8, and then like a lot of people pick up 9 again, and that's like typically it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think people that didn't play 8 are really missing out on a phenomenal game. And 10, I would argue, also is incredible game, and they made massive improvements to like the classic systems.
Oh yeah, they remastered that one, and it's totally worth it.
Oh my god,
10 and 10 too.
Mm-hmm.
Did you play 10?
Yeah, I played 10 through. All the way.
All the way? You beat 10? Yeah.
I mean, granted, it was back when I only had a PS2, so
Dude, just
my memory's a little foggy. I know my dad was a space whale or something. My dad was a space whale, and my buddy killed monsters with the volleyball, but that's what I'm saying. You could have a serious story about like this fish out of water, like fucked up shit going on, and entire towns being sucked up and killed, but then it's also there's a space whale. You know what I mean? It's like, and there's certain things I like to associate with Final Fantasy. My favorite things about it are riding a chocobo, playing dumb mini games out in the forest, or meeting little characters, or
card games, dude.
Card games. There are so many little pieces that make a Final Fantasy to me.
Is that in 16?
Not
that I've seen yet.
Granted, I feel like we're barely breaking into it even. Like people, not that I'm saying it's a long game, but I feel people say that you hit a point where it's just like Final Fantasy. Like it really gets Final Fantasy, which I'm going to keep playing through to see. But it's, I don't know. I think it still feels like Final Fantasy. And I think that if you want the turn-based stuff and you're hooked into that, you got to give up on Final Fantasy because they're not going to stick with it. They've proven, even with like 7 Remake and everything, that like they want to keep changing it up and doing interesting shit. And I'm okay with it because they still make fantastic games. Like I haven't played it, but I've only heard phenomenal things about Octopath Traveler 2 specifically. 1 had, I guess, its own issues, but
yeah, I played 1.
But like Square's other non-Final Fantasy stuff is all classic Square stuff. And then Final Fantasy is the one where they're like, nah, dude, we're just gonna do the fuck we want. They're disappointed with this one, and we might see this kind of like maybe we see them reel back because the sales numbers weren't what they wanted, but they also did it exclusive for the PS5. Like you're cutting your market so deeply by taking it off the PC and Xbox.
I mean, wasn't 15 exclusive to the PS5 too? At least at first.
Maybe at first, but I think
Are they not going to do the same thing with 16? Release it on other things later?
it's possible. I just know that there's a massive budget. Like games take so long to make, and to not get back the amount that you need.
That's a whole other topic I want to dive into on one of these.
Yeah.
You're going to say something.
Well, I was going to ask you, what is it that you want in a what would make you play Final Fantasy 17? What is it that you want in a Final Fantasy?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, even take the turn-based combat out of it, which is my favorite part. So that is definitely a big piece for me. But the card games were huge. Chocobo racing and like Chocobo, like capturing Chocobos and in like 9, like that was a huge thing. Materia, like I mean, there's just like so many core Final Fantasy aspects that seem to be like, why change them? And that's a question I'll pose to the group. Why change it? What are they trying to accomplish?
I feel like I touched on that.
I don't think you could say Materia was a Final Fantasy mechanic. That was Final Fantasy 7.
That was specifically 7.
8 had junctioning, 9 had the ability system from your gear, which that was my favorite. I love that one.
Those are all kind of in the same vein, though, right? And I mean, does 16 have something like that?
16 has your moves that you can swap out for other moves that are based on the different icons that you. What does he do? Absorb? That happens so quick. I'm sorry if it's a spoiler, but if you've seen even a gameplay thing before it came out for like 2 seconds, you saw that he has different summons abilities.
You have like a modular moveset, basically.
And you can mix and match.
It.
Yeah.
And I've watched people use that, like, I mean, it's Devil May Cry style, but fighting game style to like combo out and be able to juggle an enemy in the air for, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And then you can tailor your gear to like lower the cooldown of certain abilities or increase the damage.
Yeah, the gear it is so shallow, the stuff with gear, that you could tell that they put it in my opinion, to be like, hey, look, you can go buy a new weapon. Mm-hmm. You did not have to do it. They didn't have to give you the ability to do any of that stuff because there's like 3 gear slots. And every time I get back from a mission, I go to the shop and she's like, here's the sword with 2 more power. And I'm like, thanks, here's the old one. She's like, thanks. And then I take my new sword. And it's happened every single time I've gone back to the hideout or whatever.
So, I'm actually glad you brought that up because now that you say it, I didn't really think about it, but now that you say it, that's actually a really weak point in the game. And I'll agree with that.
And I feel like it was just like, we have to make it more Final Fantasy.
3 gear slots is really disappointing. I didn't even think about it until you said it. Yeah. It's super disappointing, and I agree. Like, the gear itself is actually pretty shallow. It's like, this is your defense slot gear. It's 1 piece, and then every time you return to base, you can buy the next piece that has plus 4 more defense on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would actually agree with you there, man. That's a really
certain things, like, as much as I like to make fun of, like, I've never been big into, like, mass menus and stuff, but like that is something I associate with Final Fantasy, is hopping into your menu, sorting your gear, like coming up with the best kind of, path forward.
Yeah. How fun was the sphere grid in 10?
It was amazing. It was amazing.
That was great.
What a genius idea, allowing us to like have creative freedom to make our characters whatever we want them to be.
I love the sphere grid.
And then in 12, and I don't know if you remember seeing it in 12. In 12, there was like this. It was like this gambit board or whatever it was called, and much like the sphere grid, except for like rather than like traveling along a path and there was multiple paths, it was just like this hex tile is touching 6 other ones. You learn that one, the other ones are available to learn too, and you could like basically learn this entire board and kind of like guide your character staff that way and unlock stuff.
Yeah, super
cool stuff. I would agree with you guys there. I think that that kind of thing is missing from 16, and I think that is a disservice.
Yeah. So what do you see out of 17 that gets you back? Is it just more of those core kind of things you associate with it? Like you want to see the team riding chocobos? Because that happens in this. You actually get one eventually, I think.
Yeah.
Through a missable side quest. I found that out.
Oh, really?
They make it pretty obvious. There's there's the side quest icons, and then there's like, here's the side quest, but it's got this extra flair on it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think anyone coming from... Honestly, it actually reminds me of like Final Fantasy 14. Or how they designate these side quests are important ones.
I could delete this from the video if it's wrong, but I'm pretty sure a lot of the reason that a lot of this feels like 14, feels MMO-y, is because I think they took a ton of the team from 14 to make this game.
Oh,
That makes sense.
And then, I think that's the thing. It's just, my critiques of this game aren't the fact that they changed it so drastically. I think it's just the fact that it feels like everything is so obviously derivative of a thing. It's like, it's Game of Thrones and it's Devil May Cry. And then they, try to get Final Fantasy in there. And so, like, the things that I love are just straight up fighting. And the cutscenes, I've seen critique about it, but I personally, I like them, but I just like
You've seen critique about the cutscenes?
Yeah, because it's one of those things where people are like, I like the fights. The fights are amazing. The big massive icon fights are phenomenal and some of the most epic shit you'll ever see in a video game, especially as the game goes on, I've been told. But they're like, their critique is that it just like dead stops your like fast-paced shit. Like, a lot of games manage it well. Like, look at God of War 2018, where, like, you're always moving, you're always progressing in the story, and then the conversation's happening. In this game's like, you're running, and it's like, and then it cuts to them talking for a while, and you're like...
I like the transition.
You're like, I'm ready to fuck another spider up, but it won't let me.
So, I think we start to ask you, and I think we've taken turns interrupting you.
But it's all good.
17,
Yeah.
well deserved. What do you want to see? What would make you play it?
I think they should go back to the roots. Final Fantasy is such an amazing series. I don't think there's any reason to change the combat. Give us the party system back. Give us more intricate armor. Give me something like the Materia, the Sphere Grid. I want to see chocobos. I want to see the card game. Moogles. Bring it back to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like the Glory series. I don't think we have to modernize it. Like, look at Pokemon. It's a perfect example. They made 50 of the same game, and they just slightly changed it.
And there's a reason I stopped playing after Gold. Because I don't want to play the same game again when there's no depth. In Pokemon there's mechanical depth, but the story it's a kid's story. It always has been, always will be, obviously. But
what about you?
I'll probably play every Final Fantasy that comes out forever. But yeah, I would like to see. I wouldn't mind seeing it trend more back towards something like 7 and 9 and 10 accomplished, 8. I will say, what I think would be a really, really cool thing to happen. I don't know if it would ever happen, but it's like, all right, you got Final Fantasy 17 down the line. What if they did like a spin-off, or like almost like a separate Final Fantasy from here on out, where it's like, okay, they can keep producing in the direction that they're going, and in addition to that, they got a whole different team that is just releasing like retro style banger after retro style banger.
That's what they're doing.
How do you mean?
Look at Square. My phone was on me, it's in their room, but Square is doing that. They're releasing retro style bangers, like they have been.
You talking about like Octopath?
Yeah, like those games still take time, so there's not going to be like 1,000 of them, but they have a whole catalog of games like that they're putting out, and then they have the Final Fantasy team.
Well, I would like to see it in Final Fantasy setting.
Yeah.
But granted, though, I will say, I played Octopath 1 and I was enjoying it. It kind of fell off. I think turn-based combat, I don't think it's dead. I think it's viable. I think there's a lot of really cool games that take unique spins on turn-based combat, and they do it really well. Mm-hmm. Octopath being one of them. I did enjoy that combat. I've heard Octopath 2 is way, way better.
I've heard it's like the best turn-based combat anybody's ever played. Everyone's like... I don't know what they do with it. I haven't looked into it because I actually want to play it myself.
Yeah. And
that's the beauty of Square. They put out, we played the 16 demo. Mm-hmm. They put out a demo for every game. It's the same thing, where if you play it, they save it. If you buy it, you continue.
Yeah. I love that idea. I think every game should do that.
It is a good idea. Mm-hmm. We played Bravely Default 2, mm-hmm. I think it was.
That was great.
I don't know if that was Square Enix or not. Maybe it was.
It felt very Square.
But that was also a turn-based game where they did like a unique spin on the turn-based combat. And that was fantastic.
It was amazing, yeah.
That was a great game. Mm-hmm. I can't remember why we set it down, but probably just other things going on. But
yeah, we got distracted.
Yeah, I don't know if that one's Square, but
What would you like to see in 17?
What would I like to see in 17? For me, I'm okay with them doing interesting things. From what I've seen of 7 Rebirth, I would like to see something like that, where they still incorporate a team into it, allow you to jump between teammates. That way it feels more connected. I think that's another major critique for a lot of people for 16. It's just like, it's a singular story, which is, again, not a bad thing. I've played 1,000 games like that, but it's not a very Final Fantasy thing. Final Fantasy is all about the important vignettes of, important people. But
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, right? Final Fantasy, like, typically you get backstory on a lot of your party members.
Yeah, like even 7, where like Cloud is the guy. Everyone else has in-depth shit going on that's very important and iconic. From Red to Barrett to Tifa to even Yuffie.
Even a lot of characters, right? Like, you're introduced from the story. Yeah. And then they end up joining your party. And that's like...
And that's a Final Fantasy thing to me.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, one of the major least Final Fantasy things about this is that it's a guy, things are happening. I heard that characters join up with him, kind of, but even those, like, he's the only one that's really given depth, and everyone else is kind of just serving his story, which makes sense if it's a single character story.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I want to see is more stuff incorporating, your team, your party, coming together and overcoming odds like that, and then adding levity. I don't think a Final Fantasy needs to be this dark. And this is with me saying I'm loving the game. Like, I have not played a session of it and not been, like, totally enthralled, totally enjoying it. But what I want to see out of the next one is adding some of that lighthearted, like, feel-good, like, cozy feeling that a Final Fantasy gives me. Like, I think so fondly, and not just in a nostalgic way, but, like, running around those towns with my party and, like, seeing what they're up to, and then as you do a thing, it cuts to another guy and what he's up to, and, like, Steiner getting yelled at by a shopkeeper in this town, and then Vivi, like, getting kidnapped. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's always got... I always go to 9, but that's just because my favorite. It's hard not to. But, like, people always have stories to tell, and I think that Final Fantasy is served better when they want to tell a bunch of character stories at once.
Agreed.
Yeah, I just miss card games, man. They stopped doing card games for some reason, and it's like 7, 8, and 9. No, 7 didn't have one. 8 and 9 had card games, and I thought they were just like the bee's knees, dude. What a cool thing to do in these games.
It was so much fun, and like trying to collect them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was playing the MMO with you, like, my main takeaway was like, I just want to play the card game. Like, I honestly don't give a shit about the MMO. That's why I stopped playing, but I'm like, the card game is fucking it.
Okay, so I mean, we've kind of beat Final Fantasy to death for at least for a bit here. I know one of the things we kind of talked about, maybe wanted to touch on, is Remnant 2.
Oh, baby.
Is a game that's supposed to be coming out here in, like, I can't remember what day, but it's like within 30 days, I think. If not very close.
You go off first. Let me look up the actual date.
Yeah, check out that actual date. So, we have all played Remnant 1. Xell was the one that brought Remnant 1 to me, and we played co-op through that whole thing. I don't know if we ever beat it. Yeah, we did. We did beat it.
July 25th.
We missed a lot of the
July
side stuff.
25th. Okay, so that's out very soon.
Oh, wow. That's 1 week.
Yeah. Remnant, I didn't get the jump scare that you guys got, which was the jump scare of, like, what is this game? It's just a grungy game where you're fighting, like, some tree monsters.
Yeah.
And then the game's like, no, just kidding, dude. That was like 1 of 50. Like, there's some weird shit coming your way, and we're going to keep changing it up and make it weird and interesting. And the only things I've read were that the next one is kicking that up, adding a lot of, like, verticality to it, and, like, just expanding upon it. The first one did feel like a rough draft.
Well, wait, for accessibility, we should describe what Remnant is for those who haven't played it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a third-person shooter in the vein of a Dark Souls. Very much, where you're dodge rolling to get out of the way. But
think high difficulty, very punishing combat.
Very punishing, but more angled towards, it has shooter elements to it, and it's very much centered around co-op and not just single player. And it makes it these, like, really... I don't know, like, in-depth fights. Like, I think back to a couple fights where, you have to sit there and coordinate with your friend. Like, all right, you drag him, and you're going to have to dodge, and I'll be able to take up the slack when you fail. And it's just approached in a way that makes multiplayer make sense, in a way where in Dark Souls it feels like you're just enabling a cheat code or enabling easy mode.
Oh, Dark Souls multiplayer.
Dark Souls,
that's not even...
not the multiplayer, but like the co-op as far as fights go.
Yeah.
The fight was always just, if someone was hard stuck and they were not having fun anymore, you pull in a ghost and it gets it done.
Ooh. How would you describe Remnant?
I think that's a pretty good description. One of the things that Remnant did really well that I haven't seen other games do, and I wish it would happen more, is, I don't know if you guys remember this, but you would load into a map and the bosses would be different. Like, you would get to the end, the bosses would be different, and the bosses would have like unique weapons that they drop. So it was like, I would run the same level over and over again, trying to clear every boss for that map, and then go on to the next one. And they just had such a cool itemization system that like really resonated with me.
So so the maps were basically randomly generated, and like you were describing, there could be, maybe on the first map, there could be, you would encounter like, I don't know, 2 or 3 bosses, but there would be like 10 total that you could encounter. So every time you reran that same map, right, it would like randomly generate. But not only would they be dropping like unique gear, I don't know if you remember this, but certain bosses, if you killed in a unique way, would drop different stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't
even remember that. I didn't get deep enough.
We didn't get far enough, right? So Xell had brought it to me, and I had brought it to Warren, or maybe you had heard about it from somewhere else.
No, I got it from y'all.
Well, so, we started to play through it. We didn't get very far, but phenomenal game. You described it very well. Dark Souls-like, first-person shooter, difficult. But just like games where they add those like layers of depth, where it's like you're really jacking up the replayability. Like, to run through the map one again, you're never going to have the same two runs, because you're going to get not only will it be different bosses, but even some of them could be the same, but they'll all be in different orders too. And if you kill them in different ways, you're going to get different types of gear. And then with that gear, you can either craft an ability or you can craft a weapon with it. And so it's just like, there's so many different types of things you do. That game was such a sleeper hit for me.
I know, yeah. I had no... It was never even on my radar. And it was just a random recommendation based off of my love for Dark Souls. And man, when we picked it up, it was just like, I cannot believe that everyone on the planet doesn't know what this is.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, the times I have heard about it, it's the exact same sentiment. It's just some dudes that are like, yeah, I've been playing that. Did you know about this game? And I was like, no, what's that? And he's like, dude, it whips. And it's just like,
where was the advertising for it?
Yeah,
there was not. Well, that's the thing. I think it was like, it was like a super low budget or B team kind of thing. They put it out there, maybe in the hopes. A lot of games, they put things out there nowadays, and it feels like they're doing it in the hopes of like catching like a viral fire. And it didn't, but hopefully the second one is like, I guess, polished enough to drag in people that aren't niche.
It's a good topic to jump into one of these days too. It's just these games that like take off like wildfire out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Just in general.
Fucking Among Us.
Among Us, Omnia, all this type of stuff, right?
Oh gosh.
There's ones. It's just there's these flash in a pan games.
They sweep the world, man.
Certain ones more than others, and having a 7-year-old, you really notice what helps certain ones like that become that big. Like Among Us, sure, it was big among streamers. It gave it this, after, it gave it this like rebirth, because that game came out and was nothing for like a year or 2. I think it was out before it got popular.
What game?
Among Us.
Oh,
that game was just chilling with like no real, excitement around it. And then some streamers picked it up, and it was such a good party game and so good for viewers and all that kind of stuff, that it's one of those ones that like Twitch was able to elevate that, and then YouTube videos following that, and it was just a perfect game for a person to watch and enjoy with you. And then with my son as an example, he's 7 years old. He doesn't play Among Us, but he knows Among Us. He loves Among Us. He watches YouTube videos of people doing real life Among Us. Like, it's one of those things. He walks around being like, "That's sus," and I'm like, "What the? Excuse you?" So it's just I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to shy away from it, but maybe we can save that one for. We'll bank it, put it on the Google Doc. I would love to get into that as a whole discussion all its own.
Yeah, there's like flash fire games.
God, Fortnite.
Fortnite.
I don't know if I would.
We could do well. Yes, I think Fortnite, but in its That was its own thing. And they really, again, they banked off of, like, preteens. Obviously, into adults, there's variants there, but
Fortnite's its own phenomenon.
They leveraged the fact that it became pop culture and then leaned into that hard, and now it's like its own breathing entity. It is not what I'd consider that game when it came out, right? Like, they host concerts. There was like Chris Nolan movie watching parties in servers, and like that was like
I think you can make games in Fortnite now. Like remember like Warcraft 3 used to have like a map editor. Like I think in Fortnite, I think you can do that same thing. Like Fortnite is the Warcraft 3 of our generation.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah,
it's become so much more than just AAA version of an H1Z1 or Daisy or whatever. They were very smart in seeing something catch and then leaning into what works, and then when things didn't work and they got pushed back, they would pull away so fast. They had their people on it to make sure there was staying relevant and staying happy, you know what I mean? Like keeping their consumers happy.
Zelda was playing Fortnite before Fortnite was Fortnite.
You were playing it when they had their original mode.
Yeah. I picked it up because I had been craving a game that was like, I want to build bases and like have things try to attack me and like build, and it was awful. It was awful, man. And I remember like watching the trailers leading up to it, and I was like, oh man, this is gonna scratch that itch. That game was dead. That game was 100% dead.
Dead on arrival, huh?
It was dead on arrival.
I never played it.
Everyone was refunding it, and then they just Hail Married, copied PUBG, and Ninja hopped on it and just exploded.
That was funny too, because I remember I fell off of Ninja pretty quick, but I watched him before he was like big. I feel like he was latching on to like Dr. Dis or somebody random, right? And he was playing with him, and he was still his fucking toxic little weasel self. Not to branch into
love
that.
for Ninja.
No, but I loved that. He was good at the game, but he was just like fuck you. Like I don't know.
He's a very good shit talker.
But he got away from that and got very PG because. Makes sense.
Yeah, you got 150,000 people on your street.
Yeah, it makes it you have to, right? You became a TV show. You kind of got to scale it back.
Well, I mean, we kind of touched on Remnant, and then, Remnant 2 is about to drop. Are we playing it?
Yes.
I definitely want to.
I don't see why I wouldn't. Like, I'm totally in.
Oh, I'm kind of in this awkward phase now where it's like, I feel like my gaming windows are in between Diablo seasons.
Yeah, Diablo 4 Season 1 comes out in what, 4 days?
Yeah.
So that is good. I want to get into just what we've been playing, just very briefly. If
sure.
not, to give it a good jumping off point for the next, episode or whatever. But before that, I did want to touch on the thing that I started to talk about with you, where I thought it was very interesting when it came to Remnant. The things he was bringing up that he was excited about were not even on my list.
What do you mean?
The things that excited him about Remnant 1 and playing it were not things that I am driven by. I use the term carrot on a stick a lot for that kind of stuff. Those gameplay loops, like those kind of gameplay loops aren't the ones that get me, which is to say like going back into a place you've already been and like seeing that they added a different enemy and that there's a different kind of gear drop you can get. Like none of that. I was just like, oh, that's fine. Yeah. I want to see I want to see all the worlds. I want to get through the entire campaign. Maybe get some fun guns along the way.
Yeah.
But like the idea of rerunning a thing was never the pull for me. Not to say that I'm not going to enjoy it. If the gameplay's fun, I'm going to have fun.
Yeah. Well, you know what that's a good segue into is the fact that, maybe we could have introduced this too, but like, we're all three pretty different gamers. I mean, we've definitely got overlap in different areas. Like, probably any two of us has more overlap than all three of us on, like whatever individual game. But in general, like we're all like pretty different.
Yeah.
So just like you described, like, we think Warren, right? We're thinking the guy that's going to spend 2 hours in the character creator.
100%.
Not only that, he'll do that, make a meme, start the game, get 2 hours in, and immediately go back and make a new character to redo the character creator.
I haven't done that in a while. So just fucking credit.
Final Fantasy 14 potion of the potion that lets you redo your character.
It wasn't, but that wasn't because I made a meme.
That's true.
That was just because I realized that like there was like weird clipping with my character and my gear wasn't gonna look. The gear wasn't gonna look right.
But you know, all of the same vein, right? Like, I mean, this is Warren to a T. If you're starting a new game with them, you can just expect that he's going to be late to it, and then he's going to have to restart.
Yeah, and
so well, that was all to say, like the aesthetics of the game are like really your thing. Like,
yeah,
I wouldn't have. I like seeing the worlds in Remnant too, but I don't know if that would have been at the top of my list as like, oh yeah, that's what I want to see.
No, man, like when it came to hell, this is one of the early boss fights in the game. You're fighting one of the first summons you fight in 16. Like not the demo fight, but the one after that. I think Garuda, right? I think it's it.
I don't want to talk too much about.
Don't have to talk about any of the specifics, but in that fight, what I was doing actually every 5 seconds was if they were like hit a spot that looked like they were in a cool pose, there's a photo mode in the game, and I was stopping it every 5 seconds. That fight took me probably 3 times as long as it should have because I was lining up dope screenshots over and over and over and over again. Just because I'm obsessed with like, the visuals or the interesting like Easter eggs or like care they put into a little thing, and I'm like, did that flower just bloom? Like that's fucking crazy. Like I'll be over there like, and then meanwhile you guys are like fucking 5 miles away, be like, hurry the fuck up. And that's why, I remember playing Diablo 3 with, I think
it was Diablo 3
and stopping to like read the different gear, and you're like, keep fucking moving. Don't, if it's gray, keep moving. And I'm like, but what if, and you're like, it doesn't fucking matter. Just keep going. And I'm like, okay.
I think where Xell and I do have a lot of overlap is I think we really enjoy like the nitty gritty min max type of chase. Like for Xell for sure. Don't let me speak for you, but like, I feel like as soon as you start talking about randomized gear rolls, like you're in.
Oh, 1,000%. There's something about like approaching an enemy and you're like, this is way too hard, and then you're just like, I want to go back and kill 1,000 fallen and I want to find an axe that is 1 point stronger and come back and try this again. And I love that loop, man.
Yeah. Not to bring up a different topic, but so Warren and I were just talking about Monster Hunter World, potentially like going back and playing some of that more, which ties into exactly what you just said. You and I had played Monster Hunter World at some point in time. And like one of the first monsters you can encounter is called an Anjanath. It's just like a dinosaur. It's like the tutorial boss. And you really only have to kill it like one time, but we found out that you could create an entire set of gear off of that boss. And the great thing about Monster Hunter World is you kill bosses, you carve up their parts, you get their pieces, you craft gear with that. But you'd have to repeat killing them a bunch of times. Xell and I sat there and probably farmed Anjanath for days straight.
Oh yeah, it was like 4 days.
Here's where the Venn diagram kicks in. I would also do that in Monster Hunter. And I was telling him a second ago, like, that is a pull for me. Where Diablo, I can't see my character, little guy, and you're worried about the numbers. You're worried about that Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. Not saying that in a mean way, but like actually, you want those numbers.
True.
You want those numbers to jump.
No, you're right.
And in Monster Hunter, I'm not even looking at that. I'm saying like, okay, is that one green meaning stronger? All right, cool. Does it look dope? Cool. And in Monster Hunter, you can really appreciate your character's whole vibe, and like that's the part I like. And I'm like, this hub world is fucking sick, and all that stuff. And I'm just like, I want to go see what the next monster is. I want to find out how to beat it, feel good about beating it, and then I want to see the dope shit I get from it, like visually. Like I want to be pleased visually, like, and not with numbers, ever. Take every number out of games. Numbers are for nerds.
Yeah, and then one of the things, sometimes there's surprises about gaming with you, Xell, because like sometimes it takes me off guard, but it really shouldn't, because you're like this all the time. But like we'll be playing a game, and then you'll be like, how hard you hit that guy for? And I'm like, fuck, I don't even know.
I know, dude, it drives me nuts. I'm sitting over here looking at every single number that pops up on the screen, and I was like, oh man, I hit him for 11K instead of 10K that time. I'll even call it out to you, but you don't even respond. I'm like, okay, I guess you
Yeah, that would just right over me. I would never even register it. I'd be like, there's numbers, and can I turn them off?
So it's like, sometimes I'm in that realm, and sometimes I'm not. But you're always in it.
Yeah.
You're acutely aware of, like, if you're doing 10% more damage, like, you fucking know it.
I'm chasing that shit, yeah.
And that's great, man, because I dig that stuff too. Not always, not every game, but a lot of the times, as far as like sliding scale goes, I feel like you can go, less extreme to most extreme, passing through me. And
it's, we all have different things, right? And there is the overlap. And those games that we like is so rarely for the same reason. And that's what's so interesting to me. All three of us, there's certain games that we love.
Mm-hmm.
And we like all just have a entirely different reason, completely disregarding the other reasons. Like we're playing Atlas, and I'm like, I could get down on this if you guys let me sit over here and play fucking HGTV. Like, I want to make us a home, not a house. and then what do you use? Like, we need to go raid these guys right now. I need to kill somebody. And then Alex is like, look at the fucking power on the spear.
Oh,
and then I'll look over and be like, did you tame a cow? Like, it's just like, it's one of those things. You're just like...
that's a testament, I would argue, to what makes a game great. Is if you can have all three types of styles like that in the same game, and all three of those people can be enjoying the game.
Yeah.
I think that's a testament to a great game.
Think about, like, you like Animal Crossing. You do. I don't know if you like Animal Crossing at all. I don't know if that's in your realm even slightly, but
I played it.
I think it's enjoyable for a finite period of time. I think it's enjoyable.
Everyone relax. But yeah, that's the thing. You think, maybe a hair of nostalgia goggles, but then also, I'm assuming that you want to fill out the compendium of fish.
Oh, absolutely.
You want to, even in the world of Animal Crossing, you are still looking. You like achievement hunting.
The number one thing I like about, in fact, I'm glad you said it because you reminded me. The number one thing I like about Animal Crossing is trying to get everything in the museum cataloged.
Yeah.
I want one of every fish, one of every bug, one of every fossil.
You were doing the same fucking thing as Sea of Thieves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
that's why I play Sea of Thieves too.
And I'm playing Animal Crossing and being like, look at this, I actually built a little island for this neighbor, and you have to hop on stones to get to it. And then you guys are like, what? Like,
well,
what the fuck?
Playing MMOs. Like, we'll be playing MMOs. We'll play side by side for days. And then, like, one day, I'll be riding my little rat through a town, and you'll be on, like, this 3-headed Hydra dragon, and I'm like, where the hell did you get that? And you're like, oh, I did the 47 side quest at this last town. It's the 48th. I'm like, I've never even picked up a side quest.
Well, I get weird, dude. I get weird about like completionism, and it's not every game, it's not all the time, but honestly, sometimes it ruins games for me when I'm like, I can't feel good about playing this game unless I do everything, and if I think that doing everything would be too taxing and too boring, I gotta set the game down because I can't play it and not do everything.
That's such a unfortunate thing, right? Because I don't know if either of you have played what I would argue is the best game of the year for me so far. It's Tears of the Kingdom.
I've watched a lot of it.
Just flat out.
I've watched none of it, haven't played it yet.
It is so fucking good. I mean, I am one of the only ones that I can seem to find that thinks that there's merit in playing Breath of the Wild over Tears of the Kingdom. Some.
Over it? You like Breath of the Wild more?
No.
Oh.
Definitely not.
Okay.
Tears of the Kingdom is better in every way. How they fit it on the Switch is fucking black magic. I don't understand it. I don't get it. But, I think there's value in Breath of the Wild that Tears of the Kingdom doesn't share. Tears of the Kingdom is very much like you took this quiet world and added industry to it in a way. Like, it's very busy, it's very alive, which is great. It's awesome that they added this personality and, life to every corner. Breath of the Wild is a very quiet, peaceful, Miyazaki film. Mm-hmm. That's what it feels like. You pick up an apple and it's like, Like it's just like there's little piano
That's
clinks
pretty good.
to everything.
Yeah,
Right?
I like you took me back to the Apple. That was pretty good.
And it's just like everything feels like that. It just felt so just like I could quietly roam that world forever. And then in Tears of the Kingdom, it's like, no, dude, I'm in a mech. Like it's not the same quiet world. There's mechs now. Like it's different. You're gonna fly through the sky on a flamethrower helicopter, and it's okay. That's fun too, and it's better. But there's reasons I love Breath of the Wild.
I don't know if I'm gonna like that as much.
You don't have to do that. You could play the entire game without building a single thing.
Okay.
You don't have to do that shit.
I definitely think you're going to like it.
You think so?
I was actually going to say when you brought it up, I think Tears of the Kingdom, other than the things that you just brought up, is almost a perfect example of how to do a sequel.
It's...
Really?
I was
I think
worried
so.
when I watched the trailers. Genuinely. I'm like, it's the same, like, literally the same world. What's in just, like, new stuff going on? Like, and then you play it and you're like, oh, fuck. Okay. And then not only that, the story is better. Breath of the Wild story was very, about as minimal as you can do without being a Dark Souls game. I mean, like,
Yeah.
it was literally just, yeah, man, evil in the middle of the map, go to the sides and get the beams to shoot the evil, and then beat the evil. And in this one, there's actual story, and it's, like, engaging and fucking epic, and I will say, yeah, I think
I'm excited to try it.
on paper, Tears of the Kingdom is better in every single way, but there are reasons I love Breath of the Wild
It makes a lot of sense.
for what's taken away from it,
Atmosphere.
Yeah, the atmosphere is definitely
which
a little different.
is my fucking thing.
Yeah, no, that
Makes
makes
sense.
sense.
Yeah, no, that's I played a lot of Breath of the Wild, and
But that's my worry is I'm like, is he ever gonna play it? There's no fucking trophies. Like,
yeah, playing games on the Switch is growing more difficult for me the more I accrue like trophies on PlayStation Network.
it sucks though, doesn't it? Like a little bit. Like part of you has to be like, fuck.
So,
Like,
sometimes, yeah, especially when a game is available like on PC and PlayStation, which are my two main platforms.
Yeah.
It's like it's so convenient to play something on PC because that's where I'm at all day. But it's like I got a platinum trophy on Hogwarts Legacy, and to me, that's like that feels amazing to me that I could play a game, sit down, put some hours in the game, and then get the thing afterwards where it's like, ooh, it's shiny and I can show people. And like no one's looking, no one cares, right?
No.
But like somewhere in my mind, I'm like, I have this like fantasy that like someone's gonna look at my profile one day and see that platinum trophy and they're like, damn, that's the guy.
People totally do that.
You got that point too? Like,
Yeah.
damn, dude.
People do that. People
I
totally
do it.
Yeah.
I love trophy. Trophying is fun, but there's a certain point where I have to like stop myself. In there's been a couple games where I've been playing and I'm like, am I actually having fun anymore?
Yeah, it
In my
can become
first,
work.
the first time I ever experienced it was when I kind of first got achievements available to me, which was on the 360, and I was playing Fallout 3, and there was like 3 DLCs out at the time.
Yeah.
And by that last DLC, because I played the entire game, got every fucking achievement, played all the DLCs, and I was on the final DLC getting like the last 2 achievements, and I realized it was that far in that I'm like, I am not actually having fun. I'm right there.
Yeah.
I have to do it, and I did it, but I wasn't having fun.
I just pushed right through that.
That's the thing. It's
I
like
pushed right through
it's
it.
like I'm playing a video game to enjoy myself. Why am I here if I'm not having fun? And it's just like I've tried to, as I got older and like have, time has become a little bit more precious for me.
Yeah.
That I really need to like stop and be like, if this isn't like making me have fun, I need to stop playing it. And when I realized that I was playing Hogwarts Legacy and flying through the hills and not giving a shit about killing these little hordes of goblins out in the woods, I was like, if I'm not in Hogwarts watching walls move, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
That because
That was
going out the
definitely the
hills
gem of the
and fighting like monster collectors for like the 5th time, I'm like, you know what?
Comment.
I think I'm actually like, it's one of those things where I'm not going to beat this game, and that's okay. Because I got out of it what I expected to get out of it, and I feel satisfied.
Combat grew super stale after a while.
Get a call. Yeah.
Zell, I'm curious, as we kind of brought up Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I don't know the extent of your Legend of Zelda experience.
Like Zelda in general, or just specifically those two?
No, just like the Zelda franchise.
So it's tough for me because I really like Zelda. I really do. I like the characters, I like the story, I like the world, but the gameplay loop just doesn't hook me.
Which, what are you talking about? One of them?
I'm talking about all of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
So they get pretty different over the years.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
You're talking about hitting up dungeons, then going to the boss. I mean, that's what it is. You go to dungeons. You generally, excluding these two, most recent ones, you go to a dungeon. You get the tool you need for the dungeon. You carry that forward, which kind of Metroidvania style, and maybe unlock some secrets around the map. But it's always just hit a handful of dungeons, hit the boss.
Yeah, the puzzle thing just doesn't really do it for me. I don't know why. It just doesn't. It doesn't.
You don't like solving puzzles?
I mean, it just doesn't scratch an itch. Yeah, I feel it just like it feels more burdensome to me. And Zelda is a lot of puzzles.
Yeah, as you say that, I can see. It's like I think of Xell as like a Souls guy, right? Like the puzzle you want to solve is how to beat this boss.
Exactly.
Not how to get to the boss.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could see that kind of ringing true with you. I'm definitely a pretty adamant Zelda fan. I played not all of them, but probably the vast majority of them.
Yeah.
One of the ones I've been really wanting to revisit, and I don't know if you guys have played this. I think maybe you have. Is oh my god, the name's escaping me. Hold on, Toon Link.
Wind Waker.
Thank you,
yeah.
Wind Waker. I really been wanting to play Wind Waker again. It's been a long time, but
game.
I remember like getting the grappling hook in Wind Waker and just loving that mechanic. You can like grapple hook the enemies to steal from them.
Wind Waker was phenomenal. I never played Twilight Princess.
That one looked really good.
It did look good. I actually never played that one either. Weirdly enough, I think it was a Wii exclusive originally. Or
No, it's
something.
GameCube and Wii.
Was it on GameCube? I feel like if it was on GameCube, I would have played it.
No, 100%.
Okay.
Just like I'm pretty sure Breath of the Wild's on Wii U. Like, no shit.
What?
No way.
I think Breath of the Wild's on Wii U.
Bro, there's no way that we.
I'll confirm.
I do want to bring up the durability system. I'd love to talk about that.
Oh, from Breath of the Wild?
Yeah.
I think this game solves any issue I've ever had with it, because I also didn't like it.
Yeah, I didn't like the durability system, and I think Tears of the Kingdom, and I actually
Fully solved.
I didn't connect the dots until you just said that, but they did alleviate some of that pain.
So, Breath of the Wild, right? Yeah, I mean, Wind Waker did the same thing. I think it was the first game to introduce that weapon, like pick up a weapon and it breaks kind of thing.
No.
There was a little bit of it.
At a time, you had like the DQ sticks and stuff, and
I remember in Wind Waker a little bit. There was never a core mechanic. Like, it wasn't like Breath of the Wild and Tears where you could pocket them and save them and get whip out your inventory.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, in Breath of the Wild, that is like my main critique of that game was like, man, these weapons break after like 5 hits, and I'm playing on master mode, and that shit was just like, I have to use something crazy every time, and it wasn't always the most fun to do that. Tears of the Kingdom, 1000% solves it. Your inventory is endless. Every single thing you attach to anything with diffuse ability turns it, like, everything has something interesting going on with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think they did a really good job there. I think there's two things that just stop Breath of the Wild from being the absolute perfect game for me. One, the durability system, and two, that game was made for multiplayer. That is the perfect multiplayer game.
Breath of the Wild?
Yeah, I think that world, the environment, the way you interact with things, like the mobility, the boss fights, I feel like co-op, that game would be outstanding. I think it's a miss.
I mean, that's a take I've never heard.
I've never heard that take in my life. I can see it being fun.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to mull it over, I guess.
That's one of the only games where that open solitude was like what I loved it. But that was like that quietness I was talking about. Like weird open quietness of the whole game. I don't think would have worked if my buddy was like, oh.
The whole time I was playing it, I was just like, damn, I wish my wife and I could play this together. And that's how I play Zeldas now. I watch her play. She loves them.
Yeah.
She plays the crap out of them, and I watch her, and I have a great time.
Like, my favorite thing, everything that you loved in Breath, they were like, let's find a way to make this either more accessible, more common, or more fun. Like, people would often, like, freeze a thing and then hit it a bunch to create that momentum, and then when it releases, it would go flying.
Yeah.
And so, in this game, they're like, let's give you tools to, like, let a thing just go flying. Or, you know what I mean? Like, there's 1,000 things like that where, like, there was minecarts, but you couldn't really do much with them in Breath. And in this one, you can fuse a minecart to your shield and then do your shield riding shit, you know, where Link can jump up and then surf his shield.
Yeah.
And so you just, whenever you want, can just have a skateboard. And you can shield surf on just level ground. If you just jump, do your spin, and then you can grind on rails and shit. It's just like the game. I don't understand. I truly can't understand how they fit everything in that fucking game. I don't get it.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've seen anything, but obviously there's a fusing mechanic in that game.
Yeah.
And there's no limitations. Like, there's all kinds of TikTok videos of people like putting together these giant rockets and like going up to the sky ceiling, and just like you can build pretty much anything you can think of.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to imagine how that works. Like, I haven't played it and I haven't like watched it in depth. I've seen like small clips of like creations, but yeah, it's hard for me to imagine like how do you even like put something like that together and like
you don't
make
even
it work?
have to really think about it because they have schematics for some actual vehicles, and then you have things in your inventory, and then you just have this like almost currency that can be used to spend on it. Like,
yeah,
and you find these rocks, and then if you have enough of them, when you choose to build a thing, it'll just give you those items that you need. But like for little stuff, like weapon durability is gone because like you pick up a random stick, and if you fuse that to a goblin horn, which you get from like every goblin, suddenly you have just like a decent sword. And if that breaks, it's fine, dude. Just like find another stick. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you just
there's a thousand.
You don't have to like find.
You're
weapons
never
constantly.
wanting for
just,
a
like,
weapon because everything's a weapon that you can fuse on the fly instantly, so seamlessly.
Well, I mean, I feel like we got like a dozen more topics we could dive right into.
We'll just go forever if we.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. Like, how you guys feeling? Should we?
I feel like it's pretty good.
Yeah. Should we go ahead and probably call it here?
Calm. What have you been playing? Don't go into it. You've been playing Diablo.
Oh,
Yeah, Diablo. I'm really, really stoked for Dark and Darker, which will probably be a whole episode.
Yeah.
I've been playing New World a little bit here and there too.
Oh,
I'm having fun with that.
it's always those numbers. Greedy fucking numbers. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I love MMOs. Just recently been playing some Atlas. I don't know if you call it MMO, but having a really good time with that. Final Fantasy 16 is high on my list right now. Been dabbling in some League of Legends again. I play very casually. I'm super shitty, but I have a lot of fun with it. I see meme builds. I want to do it. I go out there. I do it. My team gets mad. It's a lot of fun. I think besides that, I'm planning to pick up Tears of the Kingdom pretty soon. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like I probably got like 5 games I'm just kind of sort of juggling right now in the background, but those are probably the most prominent for the moment.
Yeah.
Yep.
Final Fantasy, when I can, you kind of got to dedicate yourself to a time slot. You can't just jump into that. You got to be ready for like 2 hours. Tears of the Kingdom, very, just on and off constantly. And then I just got the Xbox recently, so I've been fiddling with like 1,000 different games in Game Pass, but not getting deep in any of them. But just trying a bunch of stuff out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. Yeah.